Welcome back to the AI Wave. I'm your host, Chris Parisi. In this episode, we're peeling back the curtain behind the AI task force with a very special guest, Kelly Rogers. Kelly is part of Accenture. And what was really cool about this conversation is not only did we learn more about the AI task force and what we're recommending, but also how Accenture is a global leader in consulting that works with these other countries and states when it comes to incorporating AI into government. I learned some new things about what countries and other states are doing, how Accenture is building their own internal AI tool, which is very cool. And we also get to share with you what are the key recommendations that we're going to be offering potentially in the AI task force report coming out very soon. So let's dive into it. Let's hear about how Rhode Island's going to be a leader in the AI, how workforce and education is a key component, and let's ride this AI wave. All right, welcome back. In this episode 3, we have Kelly Rogers, Chief of Staff to our Global Lead for Health and Public Service at Accenture. Did I get that right, Kelly?
Correct, yes.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I was really excited to have you on as we're really diving into the AI task force in season 3 and bringing on folks like yourself to really peel back that curtain and let the audience know what's really going on. What are we recommending, and how can the public, how can you be part of this AI revolution here in Rhode Island?
Great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So Kelly, for those that don't know you, tell them a little bit about yourself and what you do and all of that.
Sure. So, well, thanks again. This is just such an interesting topic and such an important moment in time for us to carve out a little time from our day-to-day to talk about the role of the state in helping facilitate an environment where AI can thrive here and where we're being really cautious but also innovative. So I'm really grateful, Chris, for the time. I've been a Rhode Island resident since 2010, originally from Pennsylvania, but was a transplant via Brown and ended up putting down some roots post-graduate school and have spent my career in and around government. So early in my career, I worked for a think tank locally called RIPEC. From there, I went to work at the state, and now I'm at Accenture, which is a very large professional services company globally.
And what, just curious, you were born, you said, in Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. What brought you to the mindset of, hey, I'm going to work in government? Was that in the college years? Like when did you know that's the path that you wanted to take?
Pretty early.
Yeah. As a young Kelly,
Yes, let's watch West Wing, little Kelly.
Okay.
I had really good social studies teachers. My parents were very encouraging. I did things like mock trial and model congress throughout high school, and actually picked the school I went to because it was so close to the state capitol in Harrisburg.
Oh, wow.
So I always knew this would be part of my journey.
Wow. Well, it's evident in how successful you've been and how passionate you are in what you do, because when you do something that you enjoy and you're passionate about, you're always better at it, right?
Yes, thank you.
So before we dive into the deep things about the AI task force, just nice, simple little question for you that I always like to ask our guests here are, what AI tool have you either just found out about, like a new one, or one that's like your go-to that you've been using, or an application that's just really unique or fun or anything like that you would want to share outside of hey, I use ChatGPT to help write my emails?
Yeah, awesome. So 2, if it's okay.
Yeah.
I would say my favorite 2 right now are an app called Otter, which you can just download on your phone. It basically can transcribe audio very quickly and synthesize it very quickly. So if you're at a conference and you want to take notes but not, write with a pen and paper the whole time, you could quickly synthesize the information in a way that's easily digestible and communicative to other audiences if you wanted to share. You have to be careful, of course, because you don't want to be, walking around recording conversations that, legally are not supposed to be recorded. So that's one where I think there's just such a cool opportunity by using it. And then professionally, Accenture is, for those who aren't familiar, it's a very big firm that has made a pretty significant investment in AI internally in terms of how we work as a company, but then also how we help clients. And as part of that, recently we've been developing agentic AI capabilities that allow us to simulate lots of information very quickly. So great example that I was just working with the team on today is thinking about the budget reconciliation bill that just passed Congress and how we can better understand the implications of that to state governments around the country, given their unique local circumstances. So I think the power there is tremendous.
And that would be like an internally tool that you all use.
Yes.
And everyone, let's say if you're focused on New England or you're focused on Rhode Island, it will be kind of customized to how it would output based on Rhode Island state government.
Correct.
I mean, I'd be interested in what it said about that big, beautiful bill, quote unquote. But I know there's a lot of funding that is not going to be happening in Rhode Island. So I'm sure it'd spit out something like that. And we could probably have a whole podcast talking about that bill.
We could.
But it does have an AI component in that bill. Not to get too off topic.
The federal funding.
There's the federal funding, and doesn't it also talk about how there can't be any state regulations?
That piece was removed.
That piece was removed?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's great news.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good to hear.
Yeah. But there is money to help the federal government improve training opportunities around AI.
And that might have been related to the executive order that the president signed like 2 months ago around training and sources of funding there. So this puts the funding behind that DO perhaps.
Yes.
Cool. All right. Well, speaking about the government, before you got into Accenture, you worked at the Treasury's office, the Deputy Treasury, especially focusing on policy.
Yes. So I was Treasurer Magaziner's Deputy Treasurer, and my portfolio was policy, public finance, and I helped him with a lot of external boards and quasi-public work here. Wow.
I mean, that was one of your big roles, right? Coming out of post-secondary. And so what are some of the lessons that you learned there that you try to apply to like your current role?
That's a really good question.
It's kind of a loaded question.
A couple things stand out. And, Treasurer Magaziner, he always led with the goal of using the office to help the economy. Which is not really a role that many people think of when they think about the treasurer's office. Most people just think of, the role of cashing checks or issuing debt. But everything we did during the time period I was there and beyond was thinking about how he could use his power as a statewide elected official to convene people and to design policies that would make people better off in Rhode Island and to create economic opportunity. And so a couple examples were the Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank, the school construction initiative we worked on with Governor Raimondo's team, among a few others. That experience and kind of the way he thought about his leadership role taught me so much about government and the role of leadership. So it was a personal priority for him to take that stance, and it was in line with what Governor Raimondo was doing at the time. In her role as governor. And it just, it demonstrated to me that if you really focus, you can use your role in a way that benefits others.
Well, you're using your role right now that benefits others when it comes to your role at Accenture, because they were chosen to be the lead consultant for Rhode Island's Artificial Intelligence Task Force. And as vice chair of the AI Task Force, and I'm not just saying that because you're right here, Accenture has done an incredible job keeping us all organized, first and foremost, collaborative, ensuring that all of our voices are heard, but really digging deep into the research. What are other states doing? Because you have other state task force that Accenture is a part of, which is such a unique opportunity for us to tap into and really synthesizing all of this. And we would not be able to, it is a volunteer board for everyone else. We would not be able to do this without Accenture's leadership. So appreciate all of the Accenture team members that have been helpful with this, including yourself. So they played a big role. If we were to kind of show behind the scenes process, what's that been like for the audience that doesn't really know, kind of like if we were to peel back the curtain, so to speak, from the beginning to where we are at now, what has that process been like from Accenture's point of view?
Sure. And thank you for the kind words.
Shout out Ryan.
It's really a privilege to do the work. We know that this issue is so important globally, right. And to be able to help my state here with a little piece of it is really cool. But just maybe taking a step back, I mentioned earlier that Accenture has made a really big investment in AI because we believe it's so transformative. My direct boss, Ryan, who you've worked with as part of the task force, his job is to stay ahead of the curve on how this technology is changing governments and healthcare institutions globally. So he spends a lot of time with world leaders and local institutions of government across the world, thinking about how to accelerate the work that they're doing and to do more with less by using this technology, while also, of course, safeguarding against its risks. And the reason I mention that is because as we think about Rhode Island and the charge that Governor McKee gave us through his executive order, there was really an opportunity to look very broadly at first around what trends are occurring in the space of AI and government, and to take the best examples that we saw from other places of the world to bring them here to Rhode Island. And so we did start globally, and then we funneled our research on the front end of the process to focus in on other states. And along the way, we've been working very collaboratively across sectors. So I thought it was really strategic that you and the governor and the other members of the task force, including Congressman Langevin, set up a pretty strong governance structure up front where we intentionally brought higher ed to the table to help us with fact finding. And we intentionally brought a pretty robust representation across the business community to the table as part of the task force composition. So I would characterize the way we've done this work as global and kind of comparative in scale, evidence-based, and highly collaborative.
Oh, very good summary. Yeah, that's a good point, because with Accenture, you were able to tap into from global, as you said, to local, which is really unique and valuable. And you made me think about how the timing that we did this task force, while we weren't the first state to establish an AI task force, we certainly wasn't the last, but that timing actually was to our benefit, because through Accenture, through research, we were able to kind of identify how the previous states structured their task force, and through Accenture, what worked, what didn't work, so we didn't have to repeat the mistakes while we were still early enough where we were ahead of the trend a little bit, which is always great to see Rhode Island not last, but also maybe on the first half of the wave.
Yeah, and nice reference to wave, by the way. Isn't it?
You like that?
Yeah. I remember when we started the process, we started with a map of other states, and we talked about which ones had task forces. And we're now at a point where, if you look at the map that was updated last week, 38 states have done task force work. And so there's so much to learn by synthesizing the reports that they did or the minutes from their meetings. And we did all of that as part of this process.
Very good. So as the audience probably knows now, we formed the task force. We structured it, as you know, that had the academia helping out with the research. We had the task force members be a good representation of both public sector and private sector. We met on a consistent basis, and now we're at the finish line, so to speak. So we've had multiple instances for public input. So shout out to all those that went to the fireside chat at the CIC building about a month or two ago. And also we had the public survey input. So thank you to everyone that filled out that survey. That was really helpful because we utilized that data to synthesize our recommendations. And we're not formally complete yet, but we have a good idea of the pillars of our recommendations, I would say. And I know workforce development, training, those are one of the key pillars, but how, if you were to summarize it at a high level, what are the overall recommendations that we're thinking about drafting in our final report to the governor?
Sure. And maybe before we go there, I just want to give you a lot of credit, Chris, because you were a constant voice for making sure the public was heard throughout the process, and was the kind of chief architect of the survey and also the fireside chat. So definitely critical pieces of how we analyzed and kind of synthesized the work. So ultimately, we had this body of research around what other states and governments did globally. We had a body of research around the industry groups that we had kind of identified early in the process. We had some academic research that came out of the institutions locally here. And we rolled all those different components up into 5 categories of recommendations. So as you mentioned, education and workforce is really the top most important category of our recommendations, because we think Rhode Island is pretty well positioned to make people at the heart of this work moving forward. Most states have touched on workforce as part of their task force recommendations or reports, but we really wanted to lean in heavily there because of how tight-knit our higher ed community, our nonprofit community, our K through 12 community is, and our ability to all work together. So education and workforce is one of the 5 pillars. Thinking about how government can affect change, and there we were building off the great work of Brian Tardif and Governor McKee's existing initiatives at the state, thinking about the role of the state in helping businesses, which is the 3rd pillar, businesses and economic growth. And there we're thinking about how we bring together existing and new resources to guide acceleration in the business community of the use of AI. And then the other 2 pillars are infrastructure. So thinking about not roads and bridges, but more like how we think about data and security architecture around AI. And then lastly, I mentioned this a little bit, but thinking about collaborating across sectors as an opportunity set, and how we tap into existing efforts like the Life Science Hub, or some of the work that Commerce is doing to promote the ocean economy. Like, there are a lot of clusters already that can just be scaled further.
Right. And I remember in the fireside chat, there was a gentleman from URI, and he was running a research lab for AI and other emerging technologies. But he was saying how we're doing this. Rick's has another thing. We have another research lab over here. No one's talking together and collaborating and coordinating. So if the task force can have that, one of that recommendations to centralize, like through an AI hub or whatever we want to call it, where we can bring those great ideas and the resources together in a more centralized manner, use our size to our advantage.
Exactly. And we knew fairly early, because of everything that's happening nationally, that the state was going to be in a fairly constrained fiscal environment to kind of absorb these recommendations. And so I give Congressman Langevin a lot of credit for kind of reminding us to think about use of existing resources in smarter ways. And so that was kind of an overarching principle of how we thought about the recommendations and the dollar value that we were attaching to them.
I would say Congressman Langevin, our chairman, was a good balance to me as the vice chair, where I'm like, let's go to the moon, and let's think about how we can make Rhode Island a leader in this AI revolution. And Congressman Langevin, like, that sounds great, but within these constraints, how can we operate within that? So it's a balance, right? And I feel like we have a good compromise. But I also think a lot of it's on the people. A lot of it's on our business leaders and community, our workforce that's part of it, the parents. Like everyone is part of this, because if Rhode Islanders, if we don't want this change and we don't actively learn about AI, adopt our businesses, incorporate it into our lives, then we're not going to be this successful AI-driven state, no matter what the government recommends. So it's all on us as everyday Rhode Islanders to ensure that this is going to be important to our lives, and so it's important to the state, because it is the future. No matter how many times people tell you that AI is the future, you have a lot of skeptics, rightfully so. You have a lot of people concerned, rightfully so. But at the end of the day, it is without a doubt the future. And if we want to have a successful, bright, and economic, prosperous future, we're going to have to lean in heavily into AI from an individual, business, and institutional level.
100%. And, part of what we've done through this process, I hope, is create the fabric across sectors to really not just do this one-off report that, is a one-time thing, but really create the community that is going to work together as it evolves, because the technology is evolving so quickly as we're learning that it can't just be a once and done thing.
Right. One of my favorite AI task force meetings was when we had a lot of government leaders in the meeting, and they don't usually always kind of collaborate or talk about this because they're so busy in their days. But we had the department director of DLT, Department of Labor and Training, Matt Weldon, mentioning something, but then RIDE was saying one thing, and then post-secondary higher ed was saying something else. And then we had Commerce mentioning something, and we're coming up with this solution that otherwise it wouldn't have happened. Mm-hmm. So there's some great things coming at the state level with this task force. And we had some great ideas from the healthcare leaders, like the CEO of Care New England, and finance. Every sector really had some great recommendations that will be in this report. And when are we expecting to have this report kind of finalized and available to the public?
Yeah, no pressure, right?
Right.
So our last task force meeting is later this month, so the end of July. Yeah. And so the group will kind of stamp approval then, and then it should be available to the public shortly thereafter. So stay tuned.
So we're looking at a producer Mike here. So if we get this done in probably in mid to late July, then it'll be on the lookout, because in August, this report should be available to the public.
Correct.
Then what, right? I mean, I know this is the big thing that I've been saying recently in the task force meetings is, okay, we have this report. Then what? What institutions or individuals are going to ensure that these recommendations are implemented, that the public is aware of them, and that they can be a part of it? What's your recommendations or thoughts on next steps, so to speak, once we provide these recommendations? And I know it's up to the governor's office, and it is the report to the governor, but what would you recommend to him?
Well, it's the right question to ask. I think it's a really good one. And I think it's critical that this is seen as just the first step. Mm-hmm. There is so much work to do from both a funding and an implementation perspective. And I would encourage the governor to consider keeping the task force or some variation of it in place post-report, so that there's a level of governance moving into the implementation phase.
Yeah, perhaps out of the AI Center of Excellence or through Brian Tardoff's office, who's already, through that executive order, responsible for a lot of this when it comes.
Correct.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we need to, because technically the task force ceases to exist once the report is delivered. And to me, that's just a concern, because we don't want it to just be a report left. Not that the governor or the governor's office would do that, but it's just human nature to kind of focus on what's in front of you. So we need someone making sure that they're championing it and moving it forward, or another like version of the task force, so to speak. I think that's actually a good recommendation.
Yeah. And just, I think, a really concrete example of that. So earlier today, I was on the phone with a group of businesses that, like major tech companies that have come together to pool resources and to share resources that they're offering for free to the public and to their workforces around how their workforces can get trained up on AI. That is a body of knowledge that we should be bringing here to Rhode Island, right? It's free, it's available, it's coming from the top tech companies. And that type of work is going to evolve over time. And we want to create the conditions here in Rhode Island where we're positioned to learn about those things and we're positioned to share them with the public. Right,
because otherwise, I see it firsthand with government leaders. They're very busy. They're very overwhelmed, and AI is an overwhelming thing in itself because it's ever changing and life changing. So having that information constantly being coordinated and processed. For instance, OpenAI just announced a partnership to provide funding for schools, working with some national labor unions for I believe for teachers. But whatever the programs may be, we got to tap into those resources to ensure Rhode Island's a leader, especially when it comes to our education and workforce development, which is the big pillar in our potential recommendations.
Right.
What would you have if you had like a bold suggestion for, because every task, workforce and education has to be a key component of any AI. But we're going to lean in heavy, as you said. How can we lean in heavy?
A bold goal would be to say every student that graduates from a Rhode Island institution, and we can talk about whether that should be K through 12 or higher ed,
my brain was just going.
Right, should be skilled in the use of AI. And we can talk about what it means to be skilled and, how many courses or how many certificates, but to use the resources of our existing institutions and make it a requirement that we are training our people to go into the world, like incorporating this technology into their work.
For sure. I mean, I don't know if this is, the education system that we have today was built a while ago, right? During the Industrial Revolution, so to speak, where you have a bell, you get up, you leave, you sit in line, you listen to the teachers, you regurgitate information. That does not work anymore. What value is it for students to memorize facts about history, about this, about that, when AI is going to know much more than anyone when it comes to that? I think we need to shift our education system to be more about these soft skills, to be more about critical thinking and really hands-on learning, opposed to this memorization system that was built 100 plus years ago that just simply doesn't apply before AI. Forget about the world after AI. My bold initiative is just to rebuild the whole, I know I'm more of like a pie in the sky, but rebuild the whole damn system.
Yeah.
Because if we just tweak our existing system, it's not going to create the drastic change that we need, that AI is going to cause, right? That our world is going to be completely different within 5 years, right? We both have 3-year-olds, right? Those boys are going to have little AI tutors teaching them very soon, right? And growing up with them. So the world will be very different. Why shouldn't our education system match the future of the way that our society and world will be?
Yeah. Two reactions. So one is, like, my time in government was in Treasury. The closest I got to education was the school construction work we did. So I don't, I don't know what it's like to kind of sit at RIDE and do the work that they do. So, and I give them a lot of credit for the work that they do and the teachers that implement it all. But I agree with your broader point that critical thinking is more important than ever. And just an anecdote on that. I mentioned earlier that we have this agentic structure that allows us to scenario plan. And I lead a team that is using that structure right now, or that tool. And it's been fascinating to watch the adoption curve. And even I've experienced it myself. Like, the real work is in how you prompt, right? And how you think about designing the research questions and how you think about fact checking what comes out of the model to make sure that it's accurate. And so those are skills that sometimes people aren't as strong in. And so thinking about how we instill that in our students, I think is critical, as you pointed out.
All right, so let's talk about ethics. There's a lot of concern around AI, again, rightfully so, when it comes to bias and data security and things that are very tangible, as well as a lot of conspiracies out there where AI is going to become Terminator, right? But that means that we have to build public trust and confidence, especially if and when the government incorporates AI into their government services, which would be great to make it easier for constituent services if you're using AI, because sometimes working with government, there's a lot of bureaucracy, red tape, or time that takes things, and you got to fill out multiple forms for the same exact thing from a small business perspective. But how can we build that public trust when it comes to AI, especially as we roll it out further?
Yeah, it's so important. And I think you're right. Like, the potential is limitless. Like, you mentioned constituent services. That's one use case that is very common, right? So the ability to have call centers that are augmented with agentic architecture, where state employees don't have to be taking notes while they're talking to you. They can actually listen to you and have the platform take down the most critical information so that they're really focused on hearing you and what your concerns are. Or alternatively, the ability to infuse different languages that we haven't traditionally been able to infuse into our constituent services. Like, the potential is limitless. That said, the risks are high if not done well. And I think about mitigating risks from both a systemic and also an individual level. So systemically, having the right policies, procedures, and data in place at the state level, and like I said earlier, I really give Brian Tardif's team a lot of credit for how they're thinking about this. It's important to have a central entity like DoIT at DOA that has visibility into how other agencies are thinking about pilots, right? Or how they are thinking about the use of data in terms of their models. Like, there should be some standardization and consistency there. So that's how I think about it systemically in terms of state government. Individually, it kind of goes back to our earlier conversation. There's such an education opportunity. I think a lot of times when we hear concerns about risk, they come from a place of a lack of knowledge of what happens when you input information into a model, or what can happen or can go wrong. And so the more we increase the educational opportunity, the better off we'll be in terms of mitigating some of those risks.
It's all about education, right? More informed you are. Anxiety is created when you're unsure about things, right? Unsure about the future, or even unsure about what you're working on currently. So creating that education, that no, it's not going to be terminated today. But, and just involving the public into what we're doing, so they know what's expecting to come and how this constituent service, for instance, is going. That is important. That's a great point that you make.
Yeah.
Do you know any other states of how they're using it for constituent services?
Oh, lots.
Yeah. Just curious.
I mean, there are countries where countries are putting all of their data into sovereign models and kind of driving constituent services based on the data analytics that they're doing from those models, like where government's more of a push than a pull, or a nudge than a pull.
Yeah.
And here in the U.S., there are lots of examples of call centers that have been augmented. Government efficiency is a whole new topic when you think about AI. And of course, we have to be very mindful of what it does to the workforce and how you create efficiencies. But the ability to take out routine work that can be done by agents or AI models and replace it with opportunities to do more strategic work is stronger than it's ever been.
Right. And just more efficient and faster work, right?
Yes.
So if you need something from your local or state government and it may take weeks, well, now maybe it can take a day.
Yeah.
And you don't have to reduce the workforce. You can just have more efficient services to the constituents. So
Right.
there's a lot of great opportunities with AI for our government services,
Right.
and for our economic future. And as we close out here, and I appreciate your time, Kelly, and I want to think about the future. That's where my head's at a lot. How do you see Rhode Island applying AI into the future? Like, what does Rhode Island look like? You could be more realistic than I am, right? So it doesn't have to be aspirational, but a little aspirational within reality. What does Rhode Island look like in 5 years?
Yeah. The technology is here right now to radically change how we work. And when I say we, I mean government, how government works and how government serves people, and also businesses that represent the major employers in the state. There's no question the tech exists.
Yes.
It's a matter of how we accelerate implementation in a balanced way that's protective of risk. But there is nothing stopping us from becoming the fastest state in the nation to incorporate the use of AI into our state government. We are the smallest state in terms of several measures, but we could make the decision today to be a pioneer in the use of AI for government. Or alternatively, we could have an industry like our manufacturing industry coalesce and say, we want to become global leaders in the incorporation of smart manufacturing into our Rhode Island facilities. Like, that technology exists.
So why not?
Why not?
It's up to you. It's up to all of us.
Yeah, it's really cool to think about.
It's exciting. That's what excites me, right? Is I want to see what's best for Rhode Island. This is where I was born and raised. I am a Rhode Islander. This is the AI wave, which is the Rhode Island wave here. And I just think there's an unbelievable opportunity. I'm excited about what's coming out of the task force. But I'm mindful that these are just recommendations, right? Government has to act on them. And the people, the business leaders, everyone has to also act on them, or else it's going to be for naught. But if we do, we can be that pioneer, that trailblazer,
Right.
When it comes to AI in RI.
That's awesome. Well, thanks for your leadership too. I mean, this is such a cool podcast. So.
Well, we appreciate you hopping on.
Yeah.
Well,
My
thank
pleasure.
you so much for your time.
Yeah, my pleasure.
All right.